I live quietly. Days pass, one after another, unnoticed. The world outside moves as if it knows nothing of me, as if my thoughts, my actions, my responsibility means nothing. And yet, there is something that must be done, something I cannot ignore, even though the world itself does not care, even though the very air seems indifferent to my steps. I must save it, whatever it is, wherever it lies, however impossible it seems. You may ask why. Why a single man would risk the vastness of his life for something so fragile, so unseen. Perhaps because if no one acts, then nothing survives. If no one preserves memory, truth, or care, then all collapses into nothingness and we become ghosts wandering a world that refuses to notice. My name is George Corin. I am an ordinary clerk, a man with no great power, no wealth, no influence. Yet I am the one who must act, and in acting, I have discovered the weight of responsibility, the necessity of attention, and the strange persistence of meaning, even in a world that insists there is none. This solitary obsessive voice belongs to the mind of Laszlo Krasznahorkai, the Hungarian novelist whose words stretch across pages like rivers of thoughts. His novel, War and War, a meditation on morality, existential responsibility, and the search for meaning in an indifferent universe. There are writers whose words drift like leaves on a river, and then there are writers whose words feel like the river itself, endless, sweeping, relentless, carrying within them the weight of history, of time, of human conscience. Krasznahorkai is one such river. His sentences stretches over pages. His words stretch over human despair and beauty alike. He writes not to entertain, but to illuminate, to challenge, to make us pause in a universe that rarely pauses for us. Born in 1954 in Gyula, Hungary, a modest town marked by the lingering shadow of history. From an early age, he was drawn to the weight of words, the tension between chaos and order, and the fragility of human existence. He studied Hungarian literature and history, and it was during this period that he encountered the works of Franz Kafka, Thomas Bernhard, authors whose existential preoccupations, absurdist visions, and philosophical concerns would profoundly shape him. But Krasznahorkai did not write in bursts of drama or action. His novels are long, spiraling, breathless sentences, almost like streams of consciousness carried across centuries. This stylistic choice mirrors his philosophical concerns. Time is continuous, life is relentless, and human responsibility is weighty and uninterrupted. He has spent decades creating worlds that feel simultaneously real and allegorical, bleak yet startlingly beautiful, oppressive yet morally illuminating. In 2025, the literary world recognized him with the Nobel Prize in Literature, honoring his relentless exploration of humanity's struggle for meaning in a world of decay and absurdity, expressed through his unique, hypnotic prose. Among his many novels, War and War, published in 1999, stands out as a profound philosophical inquiry into morality, human responsibility, and the search for meaning in an indifferent universe. Let me share with you a line from the novel that captures its essence. There is something that must be done, even if the world does not notice, even if the world itself seems indifferent. is not just a line, it's a manifesto of human responsibility, a call to act even when outcomes are uncertain, a whisper against the cosmic indifference that defines modern life. And in these words, he shows us that existential meaning is not discovered, it is enacted. Corin, the protagonist, lives a quiet, solitary life as a civil servant. His days are ordinary, repetitive, almost unnoticed, a perfect metaphor for the mundanity of human existence. Yet, even in this ordinariness, we see the first spark of moral and existential awareness. Corin's life may seem insignificant, but Krasnohorkai shows us that existence itself carries weight and consciousness itself is a responsibility. Corin learns about a manuscript of immense historical and cultural significance. He becomes obsessed with the idea that it must not be lost, that preserving it is a moral imperative. Here, we see the existential absurdity. The task is nearly impossible, the universe indifferent, yet the obligation remains. Corin decides to travel to New York to save the manuscript. This journey is both physical and philosophical. He plans meticulously. He reflects constantly on the weight of his responsibility. Every step, every decision mirrors the ethical choices we face in our lives daily. As he travels, Corin confronts bureaucracy, alienation, and social indifference. The narrative itself, with its long spiraling sentences, immerses us in Corin's consciousness, making the readers feel the relentless passage of time, the burden of responsibility, and the absurdity of modern life. In New York, the search for manuscript becomes almost mythical. Corin navigates strange streets, indifferent people, and the enormity of human apathy. Krasnohorkai portrays the world as both concrete and allegorical, where alienation, absurdity, and human perseverance coexists. Corin succeeds, but the act is quiet, ritualistic, almost invisible. This is where Krasnohorkai's philosophy crystallizes. Meaning lies not in recognition, reward, or outcome, but in the moral act itself. The novel ends ambiguously. The world continues indifferent. The manuscript may survive or it may not. Yet, Corin's journey illuminates something profound. Human significance is enacted moment by moment in small acts of care, attention, and moral courage. War in War is more than a story. It is a manual for ethical and existential navigation in our modern world. Corin reminds us that action matters even when recognition or immediate impact is absent. Life often feels overwhelming and chaotic. Krasnohorkai shows us that perseverance is itself a moral act, echoing Camus' Sisyphus, the struggle is the point. In an era of fast media, digital overload, and historical amnesia, the manuscript becomes a metaphor for memory, knowledge, and ethical engagement. It tells us that true responsibility is often quiet, unseen, and unrecognized. Our moral choices often exist outside applause or reward. It talks of mindfulness that creates meaning even in chaos. This is deeply relevant in a world of distraction and superficiality. Corin walked alone through streets, indifferent to his mission. Yet, in his persistence, in the careful preservation of a fragile manuscript, he enacted meaning where the world offered none. In his solitude, he bore witness. In his attention, he created value. And in these acts, he teaches us life is not meaningless. It is our responsibility to make it meaningful, moment by moment, act by act, and breath by breath. And so Koran walks alone through streets that never notice him, carrying a burden no one else sees. He knows that the world will go on, unheeding, indifferent, yet still he must act, still he must preserve, and still he must witness. For his solitude is the only truth he can touch, the fragile weight of responsibility, the small defiance of attention, the quiet persistence of meaning. There are some things that must be done, even if the world does not notice, even if the world itself seems indifferent. In this solitary act, in this silent care, we discover a strange courage, the courage to endure, the courage to persist, the courage to be moral in a world that offers no applause, no reward, no recognition. And perhaps in this solitude, we too find our reflection, a reminder that even in isolation, even in obscurity, human consciousness, attention, and ethical engagement can shine, however faintly, against the darkness. So, we leave Korean here, alone yet steadfast, a witness to the indifference around him, a keeper of fragile truths, teaching us through his quiet persistence that solitude is not emptiness, but the space where meaning can be enacted.